focus to India's steel market then and several developments happening in this space. To discuss that in greater detail, we are now joined by Dhruv Goyal, CEO at Bigmint. Dhruv, afternoon, Ashesha this side. Thanks so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. So India has now initiated an anti-dumping investigation into HRC imports from several countries, including Russia, Japan and China. What prompted this move, in your opinion, despite the safeguard duty, which is already in place in the range of 11 to 12.5%?
Thanks a lot, Aishesha. So I think it's a very important move. It's a very interesting move for the Indian steel sector. Reason why government has initiated this probe. So this is not a very new development. The industry or the mills have been liaising with the government for quite some. Especially in 2025, we have seen an increased imports of HR coil from Japan, Russia, and bit from China. So mills have been licensing with the government for quite some time. It is just that they have accepted the application and they have started the investigation. So these are two different things. Safeguard is different, anti-dumping is different. And you rightly mentioned that this anti-dumping duty is being investigated on three countries: one China, and second Japan, and third Russia. So if I have to give you some numbers, that these three countries contribute approximately 50% of the total imports of HR coil to India.
Understood. And Indian steel imports have now declined after safeguard duty was imposed last year. Why does the domestic industry still believe that anti-dumping measures are necessary?
So the reason being that, if you see, the mills are arguing that India's safeguard or the protective whatever duty is being imposed by the government is still lower than other countries like US and UK and Europe, where duties are as high as either 25% or 50%. So their concern is that in case if we do not protect the domestic industry, so there is a apprehension that the material which was supposed to go to these countries may come to India, and we have to protect this industry. And I think this is one of the major argument what mills have been giving to the government.
Okay, and the industry argues that exporters are redirecting shipments to India because of higher trade barriers in the EU and US. How significant is this diversion for Indian steel market?
At the moment, not very significant. We have not seen these cargoes being coming to India, except that there are advanced license scheme wherein you can import at without paying duty, but you have to re-export it by adding value to a certain amount to a value, and then within 6 months you have to re-export it. So I've seen some increment in the imports, but most of these imports are against the advanced license. Apart from that, we have not seen imports which are for the merchant market.
Okay, and if anti-dumping duties are indeed imposed after this investigation is completed by the government, what could the impact on HRC prices and domestic steel prices be in that case?
We do not see very immediate impact on the prices, because the investigation is for the period of 2025, and after safeguard we have seen some dip in the import volumes and the merchant volumes which will be consumed in the Indian market. So we do not see that it will directly impact the prices or it will immediately impact the prices. But overall, we can say that Indian mills have a better pricing power because imports at these either safeguard duty, and in case of anti-dumping duty gets imposed on these countries, so imports will become tighter and tighter, and the mills will have a better pricing power. But immediately we do not see any impact on the prices.
Okay, so no immediate impact on steel prices, even if an additional anti-dumping duty from these countries is levied. That's the word coming in. But could this investigation further reduce imports, especially during the monsoon season, when in any case demand is on the lower side? And how will that affect the availability of HRC in the domestic market?
So you're right, it will reduce the imports availability. But as I mentioned that, imports are still happening, but most of these imports are for the re-export purpose. It means that, the processors are importing against advanced license, wherein they have to add value and they have to compulsorily export it within 6 months. So in that case, you do not have to pay any duty, or it is also immune from any standard Indian standards or any Indian quality standard which is required to import steel. But compulsory they have to re-export it by adding certain value. So overall, imports are down. It will not have very immediate impact, or it will not severely impact the availability of HRC in the domestic market.
Okay, and looking ahead, do you expect India to rely more on anti-dumping measures alongside safeguard duties to protect the steel industry from unfair imports? And this is a practice that has been happening for the last several years, isn't it? After which the safeguard duty was levied last year. Do you expect the government to continue to protect domestic steel industry?
If you see across the world, every country is, protecting their domestic industry, whether it is steel or non-steel. Most of the countries have put some or the other kind of protective measures. As I mentioned, that some countries have put as high as 25% to 50%. So I think India has all the right to protect its industry. But just to clarify that anti-dumping duty will be on specific companies. It will not cover the entire ambit of HR. So companies which have exploited, or which have exported at a lower than the market price, probably they will be penalized, but it will be very company specific.
Okay, so that's the view coming in on imposition of safeguard duty. Dhruv, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now and sharing your thoughts on where India's steel industry is headed going forward. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.
And shift